Awesome, perfect. So thanks everyone for coming to this talk today. Today I'm gonna be talking about the power couple that is Angular and Tailwind CSS. Like Andresito was saying, I'm a Google Woman Tech Maker, Stack Overflow contributor, media developer expert, Auth0 ambassador, Trillo champ, Springboard mentor, and that's something that I do, for the community. But my actual role is senior developer advocate for a company called OneSignal. So if you're interested on push notifications, SMS messages, emails, and all that kind of stuff, we are your guys. So you can really easily incorporate us into your iOS app, Flutter, Angular, React, whatever. We got you. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Tailwind and Angular CSS. So the first question that you may have is, what is Tailwind CSS? Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework packed with classes like Flex, PT4, Text Center, Rotate 90 that can be composed to build any design directly into your markup. A few advantages of Tailwind CSS are the following. Whenever you're writing Tailwind CSS, you don't have to focus your energy into writing CSS, right? So you can focus more time into your business logic, right? So that's an advantage. The CSS classes are already made for you. So all you have to do is combine them, right? So whenever you're developing an application, you may notice that, you go to CSS and create a class and put the properties, and then you integrate them into your HTML. Well, that's awesome. That's the normal workflow. For Tailwind CSS usage, you're skipping that process of creating the CSS. You literally just use the classes that are already made for you. And then you add those predefined classes into your HTML. The same way you add any CSS class, you add it to your HTML the same way. So that's not going to change, right? Is really light in production. And I want to emphasize that the production part, because whenever you're in dev mode, it's actually really heavy. And I'm going to show you how to take it from being really heavy to put Tailwind CSS on a diet to make it like super light. It's mobile first, meaning you don't really have to worry about writing media queries. Right. Honestly, I'm not a fan of media queries. I don't like them. I use them because I have to. I need to make my applications responsive. I just don't like the syntax, but that's just me. Right. And that's when Tailwind CSS comes like really handy to me, because I don't really have to worry about that. All I have to do is adapt my code to bigger screens because it's already mobile friendly. Right. And all I have to do is just add a predefined class that they already wrote for us in order to make my code responsive, right? But I don't have to write the media queries, which is awesome. The other cool thing about Tailwind CSS is that it's extendable and customizable, right? You can customize it and in a really easy way through the configurations. That way you can personalize your Tailwind configurations and not having to use the default values that Tailwind CSS comes with. So I think that's really cool because it's really useful for creating design systems. You can use it the old school way, and I'm going to tell you what the old school way is later in the talk. So just be patient with that. And the VS Code extension from Tailwind CSS is super handy because it's going to increase your developer experience. Now, this is all amazing, cool. Tailwind CSS sounds pretty neat, but let's be realistic, right? I'm the kind of guy that whenever I talk about certain product, I like telling people what are the disadvantages as well, right? Because I don't want you to just go straight and use a tool I'm recommending and everything is perfect. That is not true, right? So Tailwind has a few disadvantages. For example, the first one is that you're not going to write that much CSS. Right? And you might be wondering, well, how can that be a problem? The problem is the following. If you're not really good at CSS, you're going to encounter the problem of not practicing CSS, right? The second one is if you need to debug the classes for something not working perfectly in your application, you're gonna have to take an extra step to debug and figure out what the class is actually, the predefined class from Tailwind is actually doing for you, right? Because you didn't write it, so you need to figure out what's going on. And the other problem that I see is that it can get really ugly in your HTML, but I'm gonna show you one of the best practices with Tailwind CSS to make it more clean whenever you're using it in your HTML. So write that down. And another disadvantage that I see, in my personal opinion, that if you don't follow the best practice on purging your CSS, your Angular application is gonna be really heavy. So like I was telling you guys before, that's just a disadvantage. And I'm gonna show you how to put it on a diet. We're gonna learn that here in this talk. So whenever you're working with Tailwind CSS, there's essentially two ways of doing it depending on what Angular version you're working with, right? If you're working with an Angular version below 11.2.0, you may want to use this schematic right here. And we're going to talk about it as well in this talk. And if you're using a greater version than 11.2, then Angular now supports natively Tailwind CSS. So let's talk about this schematic, right? Remember, if you're using a version of Angular less than 11.2, this is the way I suggest you to go by adding Tailwind into your Angular app. I put these two guys right here because I think they're amazing, because they are some of the guys who decided to come up with this schematic. They're some of the supporters as well. So kudos to them. This is Chan and this is Vimen. Thank you so much, guys, if you guys are watching. So all you have to do with an schematic, which in this case is the ng-need Tailwind, is to literally run this in your command line inside of your Angular app. And the schematic is going to do a lot of the things in the background for you. And let's see what it's going to be doing for us. So you enter the command, and then it's going to ask you if you want to add dark mode. You select class, as you can see, right? And then if you want to add the directives, you click yes. And it's going to ask you if you want to enable some plugins, which in this case, I added the forms and the typography plugin, right? That sounds really cool. As you can see, it's super easy to use this schematic because it does a lot of the things for you in the background. But also, besides installing the plugins and installing Tailwind and all that kind of stuff, it does a little bit more. For example, if you go to your index HTML file, if you remember going back into us running the schematic, we decided to add the dark mode, right? And what happens is that the schematic goes into your index.html file, and in the body, it adds this class right here. So that is done for us. The other thing that is done for us is it goes to the style CSS file, right? And it adds the imports from Tailwind for us to be able to use now Tailwind into our application. So that sounds really cool, but what happens with Tailwind in Angular that, is a greater version of 11.2? Thankfully, well, Angular and Tailwind are getting married. So guys, this is their wedding. So if you're here, you're super lucky to get an invite. Only the coolest people in the world, which are like people in the Philippines, are able to make it to the wedding today. So thanks for coming. And just as an FYI, you're still able to use the schematic with the 11.2 version, but in this case, it's not necessary. Why? Because now Angular supports Tailwind natively, right? So now I'm gonna show you how to actually, use Tailwind with Angular. So let's get our hands dirty. So I'm gonna go over here. And as you can see, I have this super, super complex application with only one component. I'm kidding. It's super simple. All I have, as you can see, is just the default component. I didn't want to add more things and make it more complex because that's not the purpose of this talk. So as you can see, I have a div, I have a paragraph, I have a button, I have 2 images, and I already have some classes right here that I'm going to be touching in a few seconds, right? So the first thing that I have to do is install Tailwind CSS. So but to do that, I go to npm install -d Tailwind CSS. Then I'm gonna click enter. Let's just give it a few seconds for Tailwind to install. Beautiful. Now the next step that I have to do is for me to create a Tailwind configuration file. And the way we do that is really easy. You just have to make sure that you're in the root folder, right? So you're gonna click in the root folder and you're gonna type Tailwind, right? config.js. And I have this new file right here. And I'm gonna copy paste a configuration that I have. Just as an FYI, this configuration is not something that I came up with. It's something that I literally found in the documents, right? So you can go to the documents from Tailwind and find this configuration, right? Now, as you can see, I have the dark mode right here, right? Which is something that the schematic was doing for me. But in this case, I have to do it manually. And by manually, it means just me adding that property, right? So it's nothing crazy that I'm doing in the background. Obviously, you can remove this if you want. You don't have to do it. I'm just showing you just for learning purposes. And another part that we touch related with the schematic and Tailwind as well is the plugins, right? So I have these plugins right here, right? The schematic installs these plugins for me in the background, right? So since I'm not using the schematic, I have to do it myself. So it's really simple to do that. All you have to do is use them, and you are gonna enter this command. So as you can see, it says npm I, which means install Tailwind CSS typography, which is this one right here. And let's just give it a few minutes. I'm kidding, a few seconds to install. Dun, 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 dun. Perfect. Now, what am I missing? I'm missing the other plugin, which is the Forms one, right? So I'm gonna go over here and install it as well. Should be pretty quick. Great, great, beautiful. Now, what's next? Remember that our schematic was adding things to our CSS. Well, we have to do the same, right? In order for us to import the classes. So I'm gonna go over here to the styles.css. I'm gonna import that. Boom, I'm gonna save it. Right now, what I need to do is actually run my Tailwind Angular app just to make sure that everything is working. So let's cross our fingers, hoping that nothing broke. Let's just give it a few seconds. There you go. It's generating the bundle. This part right here, like, always makes me like so nervous because it kind of like always like stocks. I'm like all the time like wondering, oh my God, is this gonna work or not? And then it just randomly starts moving, and then like boom, works, right? So as you can see, this application is actually like super heavy. It's like 8.69 megabytes. That's like massive. And if we take a look a little bit closer to see who is the person responsible of making my application heavy, who do you think it is? Do you think it's Angular or do you think it's Tailwind? Well, obviously it's Tailwind, and check how heavy it is. Oh, that's no bueno, no bueno. But I'm gonna show you how to put Tailwind CSS on a diet because Tailwind wants to look beautiful for the wedding, right? So we're gonna go over here. And this is before I apply Tailwind CSS. And if I refresh my page, boom, it looks a little bit better, right? No problem. Some Tailwind CSS properties are already applied because I already wrote them for you. And let's take a look to that. So if you go over here, I have this class already in my Angular image, which is this one right here. And it says W44 and H44. What do you think that means? Well, I'm going to tell you super simple. The W stands for width, and the H stands for height, and the 44 stands for the actual number, right? So it's 44 height. Then another classes that I have over here are these ones. It says text center, text green, and I'm applying the green color, and font bold. Remember that these classes right here that you're seeing right here and these ones right here, they are already pre-made for me thanks to Tailwind CSS. They just decided to take their time and create this awesome open source project for us to have a better developer experience. So I don't really have to worry about writing the CSS. Like I was telling you, all I have to worry is about combining the classes that they already made for me, which is amazing. So the only problem is that, as you can see, I already have 1, 2, 3 classes. Not bad, but essentially I can have way many more classes, right? And this can make my my Angular application look really ugly on the HTML file. So there's actually a solution for that. So if I go over here to my, check this out, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna split the page. So as you can see, I have this class that I actually created. I did create this one myself, but I'm using this keyword from Tailwind that is apply. Apply allows you to indeed apply Tailwind CSS classes into your CSS, right? So now you can actually use your classes, your own classes, the one that you created in the old-fashioned, like I was telling you guys before. All you have to do is import it into your HTML, and now it's gonna look cleaner. So I did the same with the button, right? As you can see, my button is red, right? And I created this btn class, which stands for button, and I could have named it however I want, no problem. And I added the Tailwind CSS classes over here, right? And we can do the same with this one right here. Let's just like remove this bad boy, boom, and we're just gonna name it like text or something like that. Actually, I'm not gonna name it text because there might be something that is already called like that. So I'm just gonna put a better name. So before I do that, right, I'm gonna save it. And as you can see, now the styling it's gone. It's not green anymore, right? Why? Because sure, I added the apply here, right? And I added my Tailwind CSS classes, but I didn't add my new class over here. So now all I have to do is just add it to my HTML. Then we go over here, boom, voila, we have it again. But once again, this wedding invite doesn't look really cute, so why don't we spice it up, give it a little bit of formatting, and I'm gonna show you how to use Tailwind CSS and their documentation, right? So what I wanna do is I want to put the Angular logo on the left and the Tailwind logo on the right. So the way I would do it, if I'm writing my own CSS, I will use Flex, because Flex by default is gonna put my elements in a horizontal way. So if we go to the Tailwind documentation, we're just gonna enter here and we're gonna type Flex. Let's see if that exists. So it does, as you can see, it says right here, and it gives you other Flex properties. So I'm just gonna click on the first one. And, you know, it gives you the classes that they already made for us, and it gives you the actual properties that they apply to the CSS classes that they predefine for us, right? So it shows us right here how to use Flex initial, you know, everything looks good. So it looks like the first thing that I have to do is just to apply the word Flex. So the word Flex is actually the class. So I'm gonna save it and I'm gonna go back. Okay, it's looking better. Now everything is horizontally, but that looks kind of weird, right? When do we try to align them. So how would you do that? As you can see, whenever you're writing CSS and using Flexbox, if I wanted to align the items horizontally, I will probably do like justify items or something like that, right? And then let's see, justify content. Let's see if this is what I'm looking for. Justify center. That could be it. Let's try it out. Right. Let's see. What about items? Let's see. What align items? Okay. This one. Actually, this is the one I need because align items aligns my items vertically, and as you can see, they are not aligned vertically, right? They're already aligned horizontally like this, but now I need them to be like exactly like at the same level. So it looks like items, align items is what I need. So I have item start, item center. Yeah, this is the one I need. So let's go back over here and type items. Oh, and do you see the auto completion right here is thanks to the VS Code plugin that I have for Tailwind. So kudos to that. Item center, I save it, and let's see. Okay, looks like they are aligned now. Now, as you can see, there's like some weird space right here, and then this is like almost like touching each other. So I want to give it some space, which is funny that I said the word space, because something I really like about Tailwind is that it kind of like understands my language. And what do I mean with that is, like, if I want to align items, well, I type align, right? If I want to give them some spacing, then I'm just gonna type space and then see what they come up with. And for example, right here it says space between. Let's take a look to that. So apparently they do have a predefined class with the word space. As we can see, they have all these classes that they created for us. The interesting part is that it says space y0. What do you think the y means? For me, whenever I'm talking about coordinates, right, we have the x and the y axis. So this is what it means. So in this case, it says give some space between my elements on the y-axis or in a vertical way and give them a space of 0. So essentially, nothing's going to change, right? But as you can see, you can keep increasing the space and give it a little bit more. In this case, I'm just going to use, let's just a space y4, and it tells you what is the actual CSS selector, right? So this can actually help you as well to learn a little bit of CSS, but it can be a little bit confusing. So let's go back to our Angular app and type space y, and then we say that we're adding 4. Save it. Then I go over here and actually wrong. This should be x, because as you can see, nothing changed because I give it space of y, right? And since my items are aligned horizontally, like I'm not seeing the change. So this actually needs to be x. And boom. Oh, you guys saw it on the fly. Giving more space. Awesome. So that's really good. It's really good. Everything seems working smoothly. And as you can see, something I like about Tailwind CSS as well is that it gives you an image of what is happening whenever you apply your classes. Like I said, we were given space between elements, and I applied this one right here. And as you can see, this part right here is the space. So it's like, oh my God, I'm applying the space between elements. I think it's a really good way to represent what's going on. In this one, they are applying y instead of x. And as you can see, the items are in a vertical position or in a flex column direction. And I'm giving the space between them. So really cool, really cool. Now, let's talk about something that is important as well. How about we build our Angular application using Tailwind? So we're going to type ng build dash dash prod. Then we run it and let's see what happens. And by the way, you can see that this is highlighted in red. This is just purely syntax. It's my linter. It's not an actual error. It's just the linter that I have is not used to seeing this kind of like classes added inside of my CSS with the apply, but it's nothing that is going to break your application, just as an FYI. So let's just give it a few seconds for it to build. Since this is the first time I build, it's gonna take a few seconds. And whoa, what happened? What happened right here? As we can see, my bundle size is 4.99 megabytes, which is still a big no. So once again, the responsible of this is Tailwind CSS, because as we can see, we see that our CSS file is 4.78 megabytes. And obviously the CLI is telling me over here like, hey, buddy, this is like too heavy for us. We don't want it. We don't like this. So I'm going to show you how to actually purge your CSS files, right? But the first thing that I want to explain is what is purging. Purging essentially is getting rid of the CSS classes that your application is not using. Tailwind CSS has thousands of predefined CSS classes, right? And since, as you can see, I'm not using all of them, I don't need them, right? I only need the ones I'm actually using. So let's get rid of the things that we don't use. So I'm going to go to my Tailwind CSS, to my tailwind.config.js file. And where is this purge, right? I'm going to enter the following property. And basically, I'm telling like enable. And then I'm only going to do this if I'm running in production mode. I'm going to save this, boom, right? And then I'm going to enter my console. And the next step is going to be for me to actually like, run the build again. And for example, right here in my command line, I'm entering the environment variable production. Why? Because I specify production in here. And I'm putting ng build dash prod. And let's wait to see how much is Tailwind CSS where Angular is the weight, right? Let's see how heavy it is now. So we were at 4.99. By accident, I cleared the console to show you the difference, but just keep in mind that we were at 4.99. So let's cross our fingers and boom, we got 224 kilobytes. So it went down so much. As you can see, our CSS file is 4.42 kilobytes now, where before I did the purging, it was 4.72 megabytes. So it went down so much. So that's how easy it is to make your application get a smaller bundle size or get on a diet, right? I wish it was that easy in real life where, I can eat everything I want and then I just do the purging and then nothing happens to my body with all the pizza that I like to eat. So essentially, yeah, this is how easy it is for you to integrate Tailwind CSS into your application. And I have a tutorial for you guys. This tutorial is a written tutorial, right, that you can find in using this link. And if we go over here, this is the tutorial that I have written. Explains a little bit about like Tailwind CSS in general, how does it work, advantages, disadvantages that we were talking about. I show you how to use it with the lower version of the 11.2, right? But obviously, if you already know the advantages and disadvantages because you came to my talk, then you don't really have to worry about this part. All you have to do is scroll to the actual implementation. And if you have a Angular version greater than 11.2, you can skip that as well. You keep scrolling down, and then you're gonna see the installation guide, and then I show you step by step. You see, look where it starts. It starts right here, right? Then I scroll down, and boom, it ends right here. Super tiny. You see? Really, really, really tiny. Super, super easy to do. I have the commands that you have to enter right here, and the plugins, like I said, is super tiny. I know maybe during the presentation it looked like I was doing more steps, but it's actually like really, really tiny for you to do, tiny steps. And right here, I'm just like showing you like how to test it, just to make sure that everything is working, right? And and right here, I'm showing you how to put Tailwind CSS on a diet. Like I said, I explain in detail what it's doing, and it's super simple. And then I put a comparison, for, perfect. Right here, as you can see, it says 4.78 megabytes, and right here it says 4.11 kilobytes. Obviously, it's different than the one I'm getting right here. Why? Because in this application, in this demo application that I did for the tutorial, is a smaller application, meaning that I'm not using as many CSS classes from Tailwind that I'm doing right here. What else? What else I have for you? Oh yes, and here's the code. So screenshot that, do whatever you want with it, and yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you.